Hey dads, welcome to Father Friend, a podcast for dads who want to lean in, lead well, and love big. I'm Dr. Mike Ayers. In our last two episodes, we laid a foundation for purposeful fatherhood. First, by casting the vision of what it means to be a father friend, and then by walking through the structure of that vision using the father friend model. Today, we're stepping into a topic that every dad faces. No matter if you've got a toddler, 10-year-old, or a teenager, we're talking about discipline. Few aspects of parenting have been more prevalent, more misunderstood, or more misapplied than this one. And unfortunately, the damage often shows up on both ends of the spectrum. On one side, there are dads who discipline from a place of anger, frustration, or even intimidation. The correction becomes reactive, harsh, and inconsistent. And that's not loving, it's fear-based control. On the other side, some dads have simply stepped back and checked out. They've surrendered their leadership. Discipline is absent, and their children are left without direction, boundaries, or the safety that loving correction brings. Where do you tend to land on that spectrum? Whichever way you lean, I'm going to challenge you to grow, to manage yourself, and to rise above what feels comfortable so you can give your kids what they truly need. In defining a father friend, being a dad isn't about giving our kids what's comfortable for us. It's about loving them courageously enough to give them what they need. So there's a ton here, but if you want to do this well and from the right heart, you need more information. That's why I created a research-backed, scripture-based resource that also walks through how I personally learned to make discipline both loving and effective. It's called Brave Boundaries, and you can find it under the Books tab at fatherfriend.net. It will walk you through these questions and more, especially if you're wrestling with how to apply discipline in a way that builds trust and character. Today, we're going to walk through 6 indispensable principles for loving, effective discipline. These apply across every age and every stage of fatherhood. Each of these indispensables begins with the letter C, so we're calling them the 6 C's of discipline. The first C, the first indispensable, is connection. At its core, discipline isn't primarily about punishment. It's about connection. This principle of connection is applied in 2 essential ways. First, discipline strengthens your emotional connection with your child. When discipline is done well, measured, loving, and intentional, it actually deepens the emotional and relational bond between you and your child. Your goal is to be more connected with your child after discipline than you were before. That might sound counterintuitive, but it's true. In those moments when you're correcting your child with calm and clarity, you're also reassuring them of your love. You're proving that you care too much to let them drift. And over time, they come to love you more deeply in return, not because you let things slide, but because you leaned in. It might not happen in the moment, but I've seen it with my own kids. The connection comes, trust builds, and they know their dad is for them, even when it's hard. Some of my most cherished experiences as a father have come after moments of discipline, when I've held, comforted, talked with, and truly listened to my children. These are sacred moments and great memories that I have where trust is rebuilt, love is reaffirmed, and where character is shaped on both sides. Dr. Ross Greene said this, "It is in the connection, not the correction, that we find the power to shape behavior." The focus on connection has given me more empathy for my kids. It helps me pause and ask the right questions. Well, was this really rebellion? Or was it just a moment of human frustration, just like all humans? Maybe a rough day they had, which we all have. Or was it triggered by a legitimate need that they're feeling, possibly one that I've overlooked or haven't met? Look, I haven't been perfect in this. I've had my share of impatience and frustration, sometimes because I'm the one having a bad day or wrestling with unmet needs of my own. But checking my motivations and reflecting on what it means to love my kids more through discipline has helped me. Bottom line, discipline done right doesn't push your kids away. In time, it pulls them closer. Second, not only are you making a connection with your child, but you're also making essential connections for your child. Through discipline, you're teaching them to connect cause to effect, choice to consequence, respect to authority, behavior to outcome. You're not just correcting actions, you're shaping how they process the world. You're helping them form internal categories like responsibility, respect, integrity, and self-control. You're preparing them for life. Now, from here on out, under each of the remaining indispensables, I'm going to show you the specific kind of key life connection you're helping your child make through that principle. So let's move to number 2. Indispensable principle number 2, communication. Fathers, think about how it feels when your wife has unspoken expectations of you and then gets frustrated when you don't meet them. It leaves you confused, right? Or maybe your boss expects you to just figure it out without ever clearly stating what he or she expects. That kind of vague pressure can leave you confused, second-guessing yourself, and unsure of what you did wrong. Now take that same feeling and apply it to your kids. When a father holds unspoken expectation and then disciplines his child for not meeting them, it creates that same confusion and insecurity. The child is left wondering, well, what did I do wrong? Or how was I supposed to know that? The Apostle Paul gave a clear warning to fathers about this very thing. Twice in the New Testament, he urges dads not to provoke their children in ways that lead to discouragement or resentment. Colossians 3:21, fathers, do not embitter your children or they will become discouraged. Man, how we discourage our kids with unspoken expectations or expectations that are set too high. Ephesians 6:4, fathers, do not exasperate your children, instead bring them up in the training and instruction of the Lord. The word exasperate literally means to provoke to anger. And one of the quickest ways to embitter your child is through unmeetable or unspoken expectations. It's essential for fathers to communicate their expectations clearly and in advance. The goal is to make sure there are no surprises when discipline is needed. Here's the key connection. By communicating well, you are connecting cause to effect. So, discipline that is random, uncommunicated, and nonsensical wounds a child. It exasperates, defeats, and frustrates them. They just can never win. So be sure to communicate to your kids in a way that is 1, unambiguous, be clear and specific, 2, fair, the expectation is actually doable and reasonable, and 3, has appropriate consequences attached. Okay, indispensable principle number 3, choices. One way we inadvertently crush our child's spirit is by removing their choices. When children have options, their dignity is preserved. They are employing logic and reason in decision-making, always a good thing, and they are more capable of accepting consequences. There are really 3 types of choices to give your kids. Understanding these help with the effectiveness of discipline. Also, all of these work no matter the age of your kids. Number 1, either-or choices. These types of choices allow you as a parent to maintain control and yet at the same time stop inappropriate or unhealthy behavior. For instance, if your child is yelling and acting out, you might say, your behavior is not acceptable. You can either stop yelling or take a time out. This approach is much more effective than simply saying, be quiet. It offers your child clear options and helps them understand the consequences of their actions. For teens, these kinds of choices become even more important because they allow your child to take ownership of the behavior while still honoring your authority as a parent. Here's an example for a teen. You can either come home by 10 p.m. like we agreed, or you'll lose driving privileges for the whole weekend. This is clear, fair, and puts the responsibility squarely on your teen's shoulders. You give them the option, and if they choose to continue the inappropriate behavior, then they have chosen the consequence, not you. In fact, it's always good to say, okay, you've made your choice. You've chosen to go to timeout, or you've chosen not to drive this weekend. Second kind of choice, when-then choices. These kinds of choices are used to motivate a child to start a positive behavior as opposed to stopping a negative one. However, it's really important for you to understand the difference between a when-then choice and bribery. Bribery is not a healthy habit in parenting and actually undermines your ability to alter behavior. So a bribe would be, if you pick up your toys, I'll give you some candy. A when-then choice would be, as soon as or when you pick up your toys, you may have a treat of your choice between an apple or yogurt. It's a subtle but important difference. Bribery involves negatively reinforcing a typically unacceptable behavior. It's a payoff for appropriate behavior. As a parent, you do not want to fall into a pattern of having to always pay your children for acting properly. For example, there should be some chores that they do in which they do not receive a material reward for. In other words, they should do them just for the sake of learning to do right things. A when-then choice, as opposed to an if-then choice, makes the assumption that a child will perform the behavior that is expected and then be allowed to engage in an acceptable activity that they enjoy. In this example, you're not giving an option as to whether the child will pick up his or her toys. That action is non-negotiable. They must pick up their toys whether you give them a treat or not. However, when they do, afterwards they may have their treat. When-then choices keep the expectation and the reward in the affirmative. In another example, with my teenagers, I would say, when you straighten your room, then you may go out with your friends. My kids learned that they couldn't leave the house until their bed was made and room was straight. This was a great habit for them to take into adulthood. So this form of choice also teaches children about positive motivation and priorities. I mean, how often have you thought to yourself, when I get finished mowing the lawn, I'm going to watch football? Well, kids need the same kind of incentive to work their way through unpleasant tasks. The third kind of choice is you decide choices. Some things are important, others are not. For example, the kinds of clothes our kids wore to school was important. They had to be good quality, no holes in them, casual but nice, etc. However, the colors and choice of particular pieces from a closet full of acceptable items was not important to us. A healthy lunch was important, but the exact items of food they took for lunch was not all that important. Though choosing for your child can be a time saver, it's good to allow your children as many choices as possible within boundaries. Now, obviously, this must take place in age-appropriate ways. That is, you give your children more you-decide choices as they age and as trust is earned. This is a calling for all micromanaging helicopter parents to let go and allow your child some breathing room for choices. A good rule of thumb is draw a box for your children. That is, create decision borders. This means that you, as the parent, establish some non-negotiable boundaries in a particular realm, but within that box, permit your child choices. Here's the key connection that you're making with indispensable number 3 in the realm of choices. With giving choices, you're connecting choices to earning trust. As your child grows, you can slowly relinquish more important decisions to them as they've built trust and have a track record of good decision-making. You expand that box over time, but when they're younger, remember, in the end, parent decides. Indispensable number 4, consequences. The proper application of consequences is critically important in the dynamic of discipline. Why? Because behavior changes when the pain of our poor decisions is worse than the pleasure of those decisions. This is true for adults and children alike. But parents confuse their children in attempts at discipline with these 3 mistakes in the realm of consequences. Mistake number 1, they do not act. I'll never forget a time on a playground when my oldest son was only 5 or 6 years old. A little girl at about the same age was playing also on the playground, and it was time for her to leave, but she did not want to go. Her mom began a sequence of warnings that were yelled at from a distance, and I'm sure that she had used these several times with her daughter. It went like this. "Okay, Macy, it's time to leave." The child ignores her. A couple of minutes pass. "Macy, I said it's time to leave, let's go." The child says no. A couple of minutes pass. "Macy, I'm counting to 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. I said it's time to leave." Child says, "I don't want to go." A couple of minutes pass. "Macy, you're about to be in trouble. I'm counting to 3. 1, 2, 3. Long silence. "I said, let's go." Child says, "I want to play." A couple of minutes pass. "Macy, I'm going to leave you if you don't come." Child ignores her. Several minutes pass. Macy's still on the playground. My son and I leave. Now, when parents allow children to go unchallenged with disrespect or disobedience, it only emboldens them to act in those ways more. Giving up on these confrontations in the early years makes them even harder to win in later ones. Win now. Never-ending warnings, incessant yelling, and tons of emotion do less for your child than fair, in-the-moment, non-emotional consequences. Talk less, have less emotion, and let your actions speak for you. Mistake number 2 in the realm of consequences. Parents do not follow through. You lose integrity in the trust of your children when you state consequences and then do not follow through on them. You've conditioned them to believe that you're not a person of your word and that you don't mean what you say. It's worse to speak consequences and not do them than to speak them at all. It's not easy, but have the courage to follow through. And here's the final mistake that parents make in the realm of consequences. They don't utilize natural consequences. My dad was a carpenter, and as a teen, I'd sometimes help him on jobs. I remember the first time I used a handsaw. I was working hard, really bearing down. My dad watched for a minute, then he said, "Mike, let the saw do the work." Now, if you've ever used a handsaw, you know what he meant. It's not about pressing harder, but it's about letting the tool move with its natural motion. A handsaw is designed in its teeth to cut as it glides forward, not by brute force. You don't have to muscle it, you have to trust it. So let natural consequences do the work of discipline. Natural consequences are best. Why? Because it is much better for a child to connect their choice to a consequence than for you to do it for them. Natural consequences work better, especially in older children, because they are more able to rationally connect negative consequences to their poor choices. For example, when my oldest son was 16 years old, I remember a season when he was staying up very late on Friday and Saturday evenings playing video games, like 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. in the morning. During the school week, there was no video or TV allowed. Knowing that this was not a good pattern for him, my temptation was to simply command him to have lights off and be in bed by midnight. Instead, I told him, "Okay, though I think it's a poor choice, you can choose to stay up late on weekends if you want. However, you have to get up on your own Saturday mornings, no later than 9 a.m. And of course, there's church on Sunday mornings, so you'll have to get up by 9 a.m. on Sunday too. No more sleeping till noon. If you don't get up on your own, you'll be grounded." Well, he soon learned that staying up late was not serving him well, and getting up at 9 a.m. was tough. While he continued to enjoy friends and video games on the weekend, staying up till 2 a.m. was just not worth it the next day. On his own, he began going to bed earlier on the weekends. Here, a natural consequence did its work. This is also an example of drawing a box. The non-negotiable was getting up in the morning. His choice involved when to go to bed. Remember, discipline is the instrument, not the goal. Whatever works to change behavior becomes a useful form of discipline. Here's the key connection in the realm of consequences. You are connecting choices to consequences, and what an important thing for them to learn. Let me quickly share a note about the consequence of spanking. In the bonus section of my ebook called Brave Boundaries, I've written a whole segment on spanking. Some of you are proponents of spanking. Some of you are strongly against it. Others of you are currently considering it as a means of discipline. When they were young, I spanked all 3 of my children in appropriate and measured ways. However, in the section on spanking, I'm not proposing it or opposing it, only explaining it. I would encourage all dads to get that ebook and read the section in the appendix. In my writing, I explain the why, when, and how of spanking. So get the ebook to understand more. Indispensable principle of discipline number 5, consistency. In one sense, the mother on the playground that I talked about before was being consistent. She was consistently poor at follow-through, and her daughter was conditioned to learn that mom was consistently inconsistent. What a sad realization for a child to gain about a parent at this early age. That is, my mom can be counted on not to do what she says. Dr. James Dobson once stated, "It is the ultimate paradox of childhood that youngsters want to be led, but insist that their parents earn the right to lead them." Well, in the realm of discipline, consistency earns integrity and trust. This means that whenever a child violates a clearly communicated expectation, they should receive appropriate discipline each and every time. By doing so, you build integrity in your relationship and you earn your child's trust. When you discipline for an offense one time but not the next, it creates fear, doubt, and insecurity in a child's impressionable heart. Few things are more harmful to a child than a parent whose discipline feels random and unpredictable. Here's the key connection. You are connecting consistency to character. And the 6th and final indispensable principle of discipline is compassion. Conveying genuine love in diverse ways creates the very foundation for everything in fatherhood, including effective discipline. This is why the father-friend model, the framework that I talked about last week, is so impactful and why I unapologetically offer training for dads in it. You'll learn what real love looks like. So when you love someone, and our kids need to learn this, you sometimes must do difficult things. Properly motivated discipline is born of love, and properly applied discipline is a loving act. There may be no more impactful way to shape your children than by reassuring them of your genuine love during episodes of discipline. Jesus often used stories to convey profound truths, and one of his most famous parables is that of the prodigal son found in Luke 15. In this story, the youngest son of a wealthy man requests his inheritance and leaves for a distant country where he squanders his wealth on reckless living. When a famine strikes, he finds himself in desperate need, taking a job feeding pigs. The story says that he became so hungry that he longed to eat the pigs' food. Realizing the foolishness of his mistakes and the character of his father, the prodigal son decides to return home and seek his father's forgiveness. When his father sees him from a distance, he runs to embrace him with open arms, filled with joy at his son's return. This heartwarming story illustrates themes of forgiveness, repentance, and the unconditional love of a father. When you as a father convey unconditional love to your child, allowing them to see your heart and your yearning to give them your very best, discipline takes on a whole new meaning in the mind of your child. Children are learning what pure love is. Now, I know couples who have decided that dad is the one who does the discipline and mom is the one who does the comforting and hugs. This is a huge mistake, and it communicates harmful messages about who dads are. In truth, the same person that loves and hugs should be the same person who gives discipline. Otherwise, children build a skewed view of their father and of fatherhood and of love. If you love your children, at times you will need to discipline them. Not only do you need to know that, but our children need to know that too. Here's what to do. Before the consequences of your child's misbehavior, take a moment to reassure them of your love. You might say something like, "Because I love you and I want the very best for you, you're grounded for the weekend," or whatever the consequence may be. After the episode of discipline, be sure to hold and comfort your child, expressing your love with sincerity. Say to them, "I love you very much. There's nothing I won't do to prove that to you." Now, this can be challenging, especially with teens who may be hurt or angry, but it's important to do. Always assure your child of your love. Say it to them, both before and after the act of discipline. Why? Because compassion demonstrates that it is the behavior, not the child, that the parent rejects. Here's the key connection in the area of compassion. For your child, you are connecting discipline to love. Earning the right to lead your children is no easy task. We must actively engage, communicate, and take action. While it's tempting to take the easier route, consider this. The future pain of regret is worse than the current discomfort of discipline. By embracing this challenging work, you lay the groundwork for a peaceful and manageable future for both you and your child. If you choose to avoid it, I promise you regret will follow. So seek strength from God to fulfill your role as your child's leader. Okay, that's it for today. I hope you found it helpful. Again, we just scratched the surface, so if you want more information, be sure to check out my ebook called Brave Boundaries. It's a 27-page practical, faith-based guide calling fathers to lead their families with calm authority, not reactive anger. And it includes a bonus section called Before You Spank, a Roadmap for Dads, a thoughtful article exploring research, biblical context, and practical wisdom on this often misunderstood topic. This and other resources can be found at fatherfriend.net. Thank you for listening today. I'm Dr. Mike Ayers. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with other dads. I'd love to hear from you. Email me at mikea@fatherfriend.net with comments, questions, and your biggest takeaways. For more tools, resources, and real talk on fatherhood, visit fatherfriend.net or follow on social media @ThinkingDads.